What if Lily Evans had another sister? What if that sister was a marauder and an animagus? What if she married Remus? And what if she found out Harry was alive when he was in second year and got him from the Dursleys and became a professor at Hogwarts? This story is about Anne, who was the third sister of Lily and Petunia, about whom Harry knew nothing. This story has been written by Neon Skitter on Wattpad, and the original link to this story can be found in the description. Anna wasn't angry. No, she was furious. Anna Lupin, formerly known as Anna Evans, stormed the headmaster's office, her fury so powerful her magic glowed around her. She stomped into the room with a nervous Remus behind her. Anna was a very sweet girl, but very smart, powerful, and strong-willed. You did not want to get on her bad side when her big sister Lily and her friend, honorary brother James, died. She had been told that their son was also dead and promptly went into hiding. She did jobs for the ministry under the radar and ran a campaign for the fair treatment of werewolves in secret, but stayed underground. She became a sort of legend. Now, 12 years later, not only does she find that her nephew is still alive, but also that he has already faced Voldemort in his first year as Professor Quirrell. No way was that gonna fly. She marched right up to the headmaster. "All right, Albus, you have exactly half a minute to tell me where my nephew is before I go to Azkaban for the murder of a headmaster." Remus put hand on Anna's shoulder. "You don't have to threaten him, Anne. You're already scary enough without sticking your wand in his face. Breathe. Calm down. And if he doesn't cooperate after that, then you can blast him into oblivion, okay?" She pouted and put her wand up. "Fine." She sat down in the chair across from Dumbledore's desk, and Remus sat next to her. After a moment of awkward silence, she elbowed Remus. "Now what?" He shook his head. "You're always so polite and intelligent until you get angry. Why don't you try asking nicely this time?" She shrugged. "Okay. Albus, can you please tell me where you put my nephew before I go to Azkaban for the murder of a headmaster?" She looked at Remus, feigning innocence. "Better?" He gave her a dry look. "No, not particularly." Their childish argument was interrupted. "Well, doesn't this take me back? Miss Evans, it's been years. You look well." Luckily, after their short argument, Anna was back to her calmer and more intelligent self. "Thank you, but it's Lupin now." She reached over and grabbed Remus's hand. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose. "Really? Well then, perhaps it's been longer than I thought." She sighed. "Albus, stop avoiding the question. Where is Harry?" He sighed and mumbled under his breath, "At your sister's house." Remus chuckled and put a finger in his ear to make sure it was clear. "I must be losing my hearing. I thought you said that Lily and James's son was at Anna's she-devil of a sister's house." Albus gave him a knowing look, and as soon as it clicked in the two wizards' heads, they both started shouting. But the headmaster held up his hand. "Mrs. Lupin, if you want to get that boy, I won't stop you." She squealed and hugged Remus before running out of the room. Remus gave Albus an exasperated look, and the headmaster chuckled. "I don't think I need to ask who wears the pants in the relationship, do I, Remus? She's a bit of a handful, it seems." He smiles. "Yeah, she's a lot of work, but she's worth it. I wouldn't trade her for anything." They had a bond as deep as they come. They had turned to each other for comfort when Lily and James died. Before they found out about Harry, they didn't have any family. Petunia doesn't count. They were the two that were left behind from that terrible night, the last of the marauders. Anna had apparated as soon as she had got to the outside of the Hogwarts castle. She was now on Privet Drive, a dreadfully ordinary neighborhood. There she stood in front of the Dursleys' house. She noticed that one of the windows had bars on it. In taking a closer look, she realized a boy was staring out the window at her. She gasped. That must be Harry's room. She quickly walked to the door and pressed the doorbell. Petunia opened the door. "Who is— Ah!" Petunia hid behind the doorframe. "What do you want?" Anna smiled. "I'm here for Harry." Petunia nodded. "All right, he's upstairs. Don't touch Dudley and Vernon. Last time one of your kind was here, my little Dudders had to have a pigtail surgically removed." Anna snickered and silently thanked Hagrid. Once Anna made it to Harry's bedroom, she knocked on the door. She heard a soft voice answer, "Come in." She unlocked the door with her wand and came into the room quietly, making sure to close the door behind her. She looked around the room and saw a mini James sitting on the bed. She grinned. "Oh, Harry, look at how much you've grown." He just stared at Anna before whispering in disbelief. "Mum?" Her smile turned sad. "No, I'm your other aunt, Anna. I was your mum's younger twin sister and one of your father's bestest friends. He was more like a brother, though." Harry didn't seem to be able to find the right words. "I understand it's a lot to take in, Harry. I myself am still trying to get my head wrapped around it. How's about I conjure you up some sandwiches and pumpkin juice because you look like you're starving, and while you eat, I'll tell you everything." He nodded, and that was what they did. After they talked for a while, Anna said, "So, Harry, what do you say you and I blow this pop stand?" Harry stuttered. "That would be amazing." She grinned. "Well, all right then. Why don't you collect your things up here and I'll deal with the Dursleys and your school stuff?" She went downstairs and Harry was left to his own thoughts. Was this really happening? He shrugged. If this was a dream, he wasn't about to try and wake and end it by checking to see if it was real, so he packed like he was told. A tentative smile came onto his face. He was leaving. He didn't know how long, but he was out of there, and he was happy. He said a silent good riddance to the Dursleys and Privet Drive and shut his bedroom door, ignoring his aunt, uncle, and cousin who were shaking and watching Anna like she was a rabid dog ready to attack, even though she was just humming by the front door waiting for Harry. He grinned his aunt and she returned his smile. "Ready?" Harry's grin widened. "Absolutely." And just like that, they were off. Anna explained that they were going to apparate. "I'm afraid my house isn't prepared for any visitors, so I've called in a favor with a friend, and she said it would be okay for you to bunk with her kids. I believe you're familiar with the Weasleys." Harry grinned and nodded. "Perfect. Me and maybe my husband are going to come with you guys to pick up supplies, and I'm going to be helping out at Hogwarts this year. Albus said that the defense against the dark arts teacher was a bit thick, so I'll probably help out a lot with that." She dropped Harry off at the Weasleys and apparated back to her and Remus's house to tell her husband all about their nephew. She walked into her house and sighed happily and leaned against the front door thinking about her sister's son. "Oh, Lily, he's perfect. Handsome and determined like James and smart and kind like you. And he's been so strong dealing with all that's happened all on his own, but now he doesn't have to be. Because I'm here, and now he's got someone to be strong for him. After all, he's family." She skipped up the stairs to tell Remus about Harry, feeling like a child on Christmas morning. Anna tried once again to get Remus out of bed. "Come on, Remus! I promised Molly that I would meet them at Diagon Alley after breakfast." He waved her off. "You can go without me, sweetheart. I'm sure she's already told her boys about our marauder days and about how many criminals you've put away. They'll adore you, and Harry is no doubt just excited to know he has a relative that isn't a Dursley. He'll want to know about Lily, too. He'll love you." She nodded. "Okay, you're right." She gave him a quick kiss before appearing to Diagon Alley. The first thing she feels is arms around her. After Harry had gotten lost in Nocturne Alley and found Hagrid, he saw his aunt and had ran to greet her with a smile on his face. She smiled and ruffled his hair. "Harry, have you gotten into trouble already before you've even started school? That's my boy." She grabbed his hand and thanked Hagrid. "Now let's go find Molly. I'm sure she's worried." They met up with the Weasleys at the bookstore, Flourish and Bots. Anna grinned at the Ginger family. "Hiya, Weasleys. I hope Molly has told you about me." The twins glanced at each other before falling onto their knees and bowing repeatedly. "We are not worthy. We are not worthy." Anna's grin widened. "Ah, so you are the famous Fred and George, Hogwarts' newest generation of tricksters." She pretended to wipe away a fake tear. "I'm so proud." She saw that there was another girl with them. "You aren't a Weasley. You must be Hermione Granger. I've heard a lot about you." Hermione smiled and they all entered the bookstore and they immediately got a face full of Lockhart. Molly went to get some of the books while Anna and the children went up front. But when Lockhart sees them, he stops. "My word, it's Harry Potter. And who's that? It couldn't be the famous Anna Evans, could it?" Before they knew it, Harry and Anna were being pushed to the front. He put a hand on Harry's shoulder and an arm around Anna's waist, causing her to be really uncomfortable, and it probably would be clearly seen in the photos too. She tried to pry his hand off of her waist. "Actually, it's Lupin now, Although when we get to Hogwarts, I'll ask my students to call me Professor Evans." His grin dimmed a bit when she told him she was married, but it came back and he seemed to grip her even tighter. She rolled her eyes. She vaguely remembered Lockhart from her school days. He had always seemed a little creepy and narcissistic. He started bragging, and she stopped listening, until he announced that he was going to be a professor at Hogwarts. Anna nearly shouted in protest, but she was reminded that people were watching and kept her cool. Lockhart pulled her closer and exclaimed, "Yes, it's true. The lovely Anna will have the privilege of working with me, the handsomest and most skilled of wizardly men, and Harry will get to learn from the very best." If she didn't look annoyed or uncomfortable before, Anna was sure she was now. Lockhart turned to Harry and handed him all of the books he would need for school and finally let the two go. Harry promptly set the books into Ginny's cauldron, which made Anna very proud. She and Harry Barley had the time to exchange a disgusted look before they heard the voice of Draco Malfoy. "I bet you loved that, Potter." Anna was suddenly hit with a wave of déjà vu. She was distinctively reminded of James and his rivalry with Lucius Malfoy. In fact, she was sure that those were the same words. If it were James, he would have made a witty comeback, but Harry didn't seem to be the type to cause trouble, on purpose. When Ginny tried to defend him, Malfoy started insulting her and her family, and that was enough for Anna. "Draco, that's enough. Go back to your parents." Draco raised his eyebrows at Anna. He must have not paid attention to her when Lockhart was talking about her being a professor at Hogwarts, because usually he would chicken out when a teacher intervened. "I don't follow the orders of filthy mudbloods?" Harry looked confused, but Ron looked furious. "Oh, that is it." He was about to lunge at Draco, but Anna and the others pulled him back. "No, that's all right, Ron. Malfoy, are you looking for a detention before we even start school?" It finally clicked in Draco's mind that she was going to be a professor. He began to stutter. "Professor Snape would never let you do that." She smirked. "Want a bet?" And she would bet on it. Severus had been good friends with her just like Lily. She'd always defend him, and he was almost as much as a brother to her as Sirius or James was. She had even tried to set him up with Lily, and when he had gotten in that fight with Lily, she didn't hold it against him. It would be very interesting to see how he would react to this. Arthur and Molly came to the group to make sure their children weren't going to do anything they'd regret. But at that moment, Lucius Malfoy strode into the room. "Well, if it isn't Anna Evans and Arthur Weasley." Anna put her hands on her hips defensively. "That's Anna Lupin to you." He looked down at her ring and smirked. "Ah, yes. When was the wedding? I don't think I ever got the invite." She smirked. "Were you too busy shopping for a new pimp cane to check the mail?" The children burst into laughter, and the twins high-fived her and congratulated her in unison. Lucius frowned and turned his attention to Arthur. "Busy time at the ministry with all those raids. I hope they're paying you overtime." He picked up one of Ginny's books and looked at the clothes the family was wearing. "Obviously not. Dear me. What's the use of being a disgrace to the name of wizards if they don't even pay you well for it?" Anna stepped up. "You would know all about being a disgrace to wizards, wouldn't you?" Arthur nodded. "We have very different ideas of what disgraces wizards, Lucius." Lucius looked over Anna, Hermione, and Hermione's parents. "Clearly, the company you keep, Weasley, and here I thought your family couldn't sink any lower." With a clang, Arthur dropped the cauldron and lunged at Lucius. Luckily, before anybody could get too hurt, Hagrid broke up the fight. Mr. Weasley had a cut lip, and Lucius had a black eye. Lucius threw Ginny's book in the cauldron and said some insult to try and hide how bad Arthur had beat him. The whole rest of the trip, the kids and Anna told him how awesome it was, while Molly complained about being embarrassed because Gilderoy Lockhart had seen. But they told her that he didn't mind. Lockhart had even told the photographer to take pictures. Anna bid her farewells and told Harry she would meet him at Hogwarts after giving Harry a hug and the Weasley twins a fist bump. She finally went home. Speaking of pictures and Lockhart, Remus will have a fit when he sees Gilderoy putting his arm around her in the newspaper tomorrow morning and hear that he'll be teaching with her every day. Oh well, he probably won't even notice. No way. Remus had noticed, and now he was less keen on sending his wife to a castle in the middle of nowhere that he can't apparate to right away. He wasn't mad at her. It was obvious in the photo how uncomfortable she and Harry were. No, He was angry because Gilderoy had done it even after she told him she was married. He didn't want Lockhart trying to seduce his wife. Anna was shaking her head in exasperation. "Oh, come on, Remus. You're being completely ridiculous. It's not like I would ever leave you for some phony baloney wizard who can't even do a simple levitation spell." He shook his head. "It's not that. In that picture, he wouldn't let you go. I don't want him making you uncomfortable and being so unprofessional." She rolled her eyes. "Remus, I'll have my wand on me the whole time. If anything happens, he'll be a toad before you can say hocus pocus." He furrowed his eyebrow in confusion. "Why would I say that?" She shrugged. "It's a muggle thing, but never mind that. The point is, I'm going to be fine. Severus will be there too." He gave her a dry look. "That doesn't make me feel better." She sighed. "Remus, I made 3 cauldrons full of your potion. It's in the fridge along with some stew in case you're hungry. Owl me if you need more. I'm already packed, so I'm going to apparate somewhere near the castle. I'm leaving now. Do you have that witch's glass I gave you?" He nodded. "Yeah, what is it?" She showed him how it worked. "This lets the 2 people who have the glasses communicate face to face, but I still want letters." He nodded before snapping his fingers. "Wait, your owl!" She gasped and whistled. In an instant, Anna's magnificent grey and white owl, Avalon, flew over and perched on Anna's shoulder. She gave Remus a long kiss goodbye before apparating away. Anna had forgotten how big and beautiful Hogwarts was, and most of all, how hard it was to navigate. She realized when she got there that she didn't know where the teachers stayed. Luckily, though, a lot of teachers came early to prepare their rooms and classrooms. She smiled when she spotted Professor McGonagall telling off Peeves, the local poltergeist of Hogwarts. She practically bounced all the way to who was her favorite teacher, Minnie! That was what all the marauders had called Minerva McGonagall, though Anna seemed to be the only one of them allowed to say it because she was her favorite student. Minerva smiled and gave Anna a gentle hug. "Oh, sweet little Anna, I haven't seen you in years. Look at you." Anna thanked her and awkwardly rubbed the back of her neck. "I seem to be having trouble." Minerva gave her a knowing look. "You're lost again, aren't you, dear?" Anna nodded. "Yep, takes you back, doesn't it?" Minerva nodded. "Indeed. After all, I was always the one who had to escort you to the Gryffindor common room every single year, and your lack of navigational skills has gotten you into more trouble on accident than the Weasley twins get into on purpose. You managed to accidentally wander into some of the most dangerous rooms in the whole castle, rooms that many students try and fail to find in the first place." Anna didn't deny it. "So, can you show me my room?" Minerva nodded. "Certainly." Anna had even managed to get Minerva's help setting up her room by filling the bookshelves, hanging posters, put on her covers to her bed. Once they were done, they admired their work, but Anna didn't know what to do next. "What now?" Minerva sighed. "I, unfortunately, have a classroom to prepare, while you don't because you are our new head of security and assistant teacher. You don't have a class." Anna thought for a second. "I know. I'll go see Severus." Minerva smirked. Knowing that she and Severus were still almost like siblings, Anna being the younger one. Severus seemed happier around her and was protective of her for reasons even he probably didn't know. Despite Anna's contrastingly happy personality, they seemed to just click. She knew he missed the conversations they used to have, both the intellectual ones and the random ones. It was very strange. McGonagall suspected that his brotherly nature towards her hasn't changed. She smiled as Anna practically skipped all the way to Severus's classroom. That girl was going to drive him absolutely mad this year. Severus wasn't expecting any visitors before the children arrived. Maybe McGonagall would stop by to place an early bet on the outcome of the next Quidditch tournament. But that was unlikely considering the team members hadn't even been picked out yet. So he was fairly surprised he heard a knock on the door. He opened the door, prepared to slam it again depending on who it was, when he realized it was Anna, in the flesh. He didn't even get to a word put before she wrapped her arms around his neck. "Severus, I missed you." He managed a small smile. "I missed you as well." She grinned. "How have you been?" He shrugged. "The same. Has anything new happened with you?" She smiled sheepishly and held on her hand with her wedding ring on it. "I got married." Severus' face palmed almost playfully. "Please don't tell me you married that mutt." She stayed silent. He got impatient. "Well, did you marry him?" She smirked. "You told me not to tell you, assuming you're talking about Remus. You seemed surprised when I came here. Did you not know I was coming?" He scowled. I assume the headmaster kept this information a secret, so I would be surprised. She raised an eyebrow. But it was on the front page of the newspaper since Lockhart decided to tell everybody. I wish he hadn't made me do that uncomfortable photo shoot, though. Recognition flashed in Snape's eyes. Oh, that. I burned it the moment I saw Lockhart's face. I didn't get to see the face of the person he was holding. I remember feeling pity towards the poor woman in the shot, though. It had to be torture, standing that close to someone that stupid. At this point, he was giving her a knowing look and a sly smile. She smirked in amusement. Yeah, and it gets worse. We're both going to be working with him the whole school year, especially me. He put a hand on her shoulder. Hopefully this will be one of the DA teachers who end up quitting before half the year is over. She laughed. But when have we ever been that lucky, Severus? He returned her smirk. She smiled cheerfully and shrugged. And besides, I doubt he'll want to hang out with us. Usually, when we don't want someone near us, we make it pretty clear. Severus nodded, reassured. She's right. He thought, even the stupidest people got the message when we wanted them to leave us alone. You'd have to be dumber than a bag of sand to not get the message, and surely he's not that dumb. Severus had overestimated Gilderoy, because when the idiot arrived, guess who he decided to hang out with? Lockhart had only been there for 2 hours, and the two had already tried everything to get rid of him. Severus hadn't known what to expect, because he hadn't really talked to Gilderoy before. He'd only been making fun of him based on what he'd read. He hadn't been even remotely prepared for the egotistical dunce that had strode through the Hogwarts halls. The idiot had been completely unaware and oblivious to both of their insults. He had laughed at Severus's threats, and he wasn't fazed when Hagrid had to drag her out of the room, kicking and screaming after he had the audacity to claim that she was too embarrassed to admit secretly in love with him. Severus wouldn't have bothered to stop her from strangling him if it were up to him. He had to admit, for such a nice person, the red head had quite the temper. Luckily, the fool had gone to his room to unpack, but by that time it was nearly time for the children to arrive. Anna left Severus with an excited, "See ya, Sev," and headed to the front hallway. She watched as all the kids came in, but he didn't see Harry. She looked around for Ron, figuring that he would be easier to find. She saw Ginny, Fred, George, and Percy, but Ron was nowhere in sight. By this time, she was getting freaked out a bit. She continued waiting for Harry when finally she spotted Hermione. The witch looked up at the sound of her name and looked relieved at the sight of Harry's aunt, Professor Evans. Anna made a note to tell her students what to call her. She pulled Hermione aside. "Hermione, I'm not in teacher mode right now. Call me Anna right now. Where's Harry?" Hermione just shook her head. "I have no idea. I searched every seat on that train and I couldn't find him or Ron. I'm worried. They seem to have a knack for getting into trouble." Anna tried to keep calm. "They probably just missed their train. They're okay. They will probably be smart enough to send an owl ahead, right?" Hermione looked unsure. "Well, usually I'm the voice of reason in our group. Who knows what they're doing?" Anna was sitting between Severus and McGonagall, almost hyperventilating. Snape kept glancing at her with concern, which caused confusion to shoot through some of the students. She only moved when she had to stand when she was introduced by Dumbledore and when she clapped for Ginny when she got Gryffindor. She had been planning on not touching her food either, but who could really resist a Hogwarts feast? She hadn't eaten much, but enough. Anna couldn't take it anymore. She had been pacing around her room and decided to go downstairs to sneak into the kitchen and eat her worries away with a tub of Hogwarts ice cream. But when she got there, she was surprised by a most alarming and unusual sight. McGonagall, Severus, and Dumbledore were all fighting with each other and yelling at Harry and Ron. Anna took in a deep breath and shouted, "Quiet!" in a stern voice. They all stared at her, looking like children caught sneaking a cookie from the cookie jar. Anna sighed. "First things first." She turned to Harry and gripped him in her biggest hug. "Don't you ever do that again, young man. You scared me so much. I don't need another dead family member." Harry looked ashamed. He hadn't thought anyone would worry about him. She turned to the others. "Now, somebody tell me what the heck is going on." The teachers hastily explained, and Anna exploded. "What? You crashed a flying car into a tree. And not just any tree. You had to hit the one tree that hits back." Ron put his hands up in exasperation. "That's what I said." Severus nodded. "Yes, that is why I suggest you expel them, headmaster." Anna turned to Snape with her big puppy dog eyes. "Oh, come on, Sev. You can let it go, can't you? For me?" Severus looked like he wanted to argue, but to Ron and Harry's surprise, he didn't make another sound. They made a mental note to question the older witch later. She turned back to the headmaster with a persuasive grin. "Now, while I don't think expulsion is appropriate, I don't think punishment is out of question. I say they both get a detention. What say you?" she asked Dumbledore. "That sounds reasonable. McGonagall?" The woman in question nodded. "All right." She waved her wand and sandwiches appeared. "Mrs. Evans, watch these two and see that after they eat, they go straight to their dorms and sleep." Anna nodded, and Professor Snape left almost reluctantly. Anna turned to her nephew and his friend, relieved. "Merlin, Harry, you're lucky I was here to save you from expulsion, and what would I do if I lost you?" Harry looked guilty. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." She nodded and ruffled his hair. "Oh, that's all right, Harry. I know you didn't." Ron tilted his head in thought. "Hey, Anna, do you and Snape know each other?" She nodded. "Yep. We were great friends back in school, though my friends had rivalry with him. We still are friends." The two wizards glanced at each other and decided not to ask. They finished eating, and Anna gave Harry a kiss on the cheek and Ron a ruffle of his hair. She waited until she was sure they were gone before turning into her animagus form, a fox, and finding her way back to her sleeping quarters. Anna was terrified for Ron. Last night she had to notify Molly that the car hadn't been stolen, that Ron took it. She had sent Avalon to the Weasleys, and she knew what was coming, and poor Ron didn't even have a clue. She sat at the teacher's table next to Snape and, unfortunately, Lockhart. It had been the only seat left. Gilderoy was in the middle of telling her about one of his adventures, but she was focused on the Gryffindor table. James had gotten howlers before. She winced at the memory. Mrs. Potter was nice, but she had a very loud, sharp voice. She saw the Weasley owl, Errol, swoop down and land in front of Ron. She saw Ron's eyes widen in horror when he saw it. She hoped he'd know better than to not open it, though. James had tried that with his third howler. He got a lot of howlers, and it wasn't pretty. Finally, with a gulp, Ron tore open the howler, and Molly's terrifying voice rose above all over the noise. Anna winced and clutched her sensitive fox ears. She'd forgotten how loud and terrifying little Molly could be. Just another reason you should never underestimate a redhead. She sighed in relief when it was over and rubbed her temples, looking at Ron sympathetically. That will definitely haunt him for the next week or two. The Slytherins will tease for this for as long as possible, especially Draco Malfoy. When the young student's name came into Anna's mind, she was suddenly reminded that she had a score to settle. Anna pretended to be slightly upset. Instantly, Severus noticed, and although concerns entered his eyes, he tried not to make it too obvious so he wouldn't hurt his reputation among the students. "What's wrong?" he asked. She looked down as if wondering whether or not it was a good idea to tell him, "Over the weekend at Diagon Alley, something, or I guess I should say someone, bothered me." Severus scowled. "Was it that blasted Lockhart? If he's done something—" She quickly interrupted him. No, it wasn't Lockhart, it was Draco Malfoy." Severus raised his eyebrows in shock. "But Draco is—" "A bully," said Anna. "A bully who goes after Muggleborns and Gryffindors, which I am both of. He didn't know I was a teacher. He called me a mudblood." Anna watched as Severus's protective side came out in full force. He hated that word. His jaw clenched. "Did he now?" She nodded. "Yeah, and he said I couldn't punish him." Severus shook his head. "No, you can. But you have to have the head of his house do the punishing, and I would be happy to oblige." She smiled. "Thanks, Sev." He smirked evilly. "Trust me, it's no trouble." Finally, it was time for class to start. This period, she offered to help Professor Sprout with the mandrakes and the second years. Anna may or may not have done this, so she could see Harry more often. She also wanted to find more ways to stay out of Gilderoy's class, but she was mainly Lockhart's assistant teacher. When she got to the greenhouse, she found Harry, Hermione, and Ron were the first ones there. Unfortunately, Lockhart was also there, attempting to instruct the professor on the proper way to nurse a whomping willow back to health. She cleared her throat, and instantly Lockhart's attention shifted. "Why, hello, Professor. You look absolutely stunning today." She opened her mouth to speak, but he held his hand up. No, you don't have to tell me how great I look. I know it must be hard for you to form words when around someone this attractive, but you must hold back. I know you have the urge to throw yourself into my arms, but this isn't the time or place. But between classes or any other time isn't out of the question. I would very much enjoy getting to know you better." He flashed her a blinding smile, and she rolled her eyes in absolute disgust before stomping to the back of the greenhouse to fetch the noise-cancelling earmuffs for the lesson. Meanwhile, Harry glared at the pretentious DA teacher that stood before him. How dare he treat his favourite aunt like that? It was bad enough he was flirting shamelessly with a married woman, but she was also his co-worker, and she was clearly very uncomfortable. Lockhart's eyes landed on Harry, and they lit up, obviously not registering the very clear glare Harry had been sending his way. "Harry, I've been wanting a word. Do you mind if Harry is a couple minutes late, Professor?" Not bothering to wait for an answer or ask Harry if he minded, he ushered him out of the room. Anna bowed her head from where she was passing out the earmuffs and silently wished him good luck. Luckily, Harry made it back in the room in time for him to hear all the instructions he needed for the lesson, but he didn't seem any happier with Gilderoy. He seemed annoyed, angry, and confused. While Anna did notice, she was more focused on thinking of ways to get revenge on Draco Malfoy. Hey, she may be a teacher, but she was still a marauder, and she could hold a grudge. She wasn't going to let that lame, whiny, rich, pureblood Slytherin boy bully her nephew without a few consequences. She was snapped back into reality when he heard Justin Finch-Fletchley talking about how great Lockhart was with her nephew. But that wasn't what had caught her attention. He was talking about one of Gilderoy's adventures, one about a werewolf. "I'd have died of fear if I had been caught in a telephone booth with a werewolf." She didn't bother listening to the rest of the boys' jibber-jabber. Her blood boiled. She was a very strong supporter of werewolf rights. She'd even managed to get them more freedom with the ministry through protest, campaigns, and research. One of her biggest pet peeves was when werewolf were referred to as if they were just another monster or creature, a common beast, when in reality they were people that need help to get through a terrible and uncontrollable condition. Some couldn't afford wolfsbane because people won't give them jobs and they are constantly criticized. Anna actually found Remus's werewolf self quite sweet when she was in her animagus form. His wolf part seemed to associate her as a part of his pack, his mate. Sometimes she would even be able to be with him while she was in human form because their bond was so strong. She didn't just accept his condition, she thought it was fascinating and beautiful at times. Her anger and annoyance was quickly replaced with worry and longing. How would Moony, Remus's werewolf name and marauder nickname, take being all alone? How would Remus? She remembered what Remus used to tell her about how bad Moony used to react to being all alone, how he would howl and screech and bark and slam himself into the walls of whatever kept him separated from the outside, and he would do so because wolves aren't meant to be alone. They were like dogs. They needed a pack or a companion. She shook those thoughts away and decided to give Remus a call on the Witch's Glass sometime. She needed to focus on her job. She wandered over to a Hufflepuff girl and showed her the right way to hold her mandrake.